was not that long ago in which Andre Drummond was universally viewed as the best backup big man in the Joel Embiid era, but things have not gone as smoothly in his second tenure here in Philadelphia, and new reports are surfacing that he is a name to watch for a potential midseason trade. I do want to dive into the latest reports that we are getting, why I do think this carries a little bit of a weight from a financial standpoint here, and sort of reflect through what are fair expectations for Andre Drummond heading into the season. Obviously, everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Philadelphia 76ers last year, and Drummond is not excluded by that or excluded from that. He also was not the source of many of those, although it definitely would have been helpful if we could have kept a bit more stability during the long stretches in which Joel Embiid was absent from this team. But nonetheless, let's dive into the topic of today, and do just want to start out with the headline on here. This coming from Heavy Sports here. Shout out to a former employer of mine. And the headline, Sixers veteran center cited as potential in-season trade candidate. And the article continues on to write, earlier this summer, Andre Drummond opted into the player option on his contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. As much as the veteran big man will earn $5 million for anchoring the Sixers' second unit front court rotation in the upcoming season. That is, of course, unless the Sixers choose to trade Drummond ahead of the February 5th deadline in 2026. And according to Matty Bryce of Clutch Points, that is precisely what the Sixers front office could decide to do. Quote, if the 76ers had their way, they would have already moved on from Andre Drummond, Bryce wrote. Once considered the best backup center the 76ers have employed behind Embiid, the former $100 million center from the Detroit Pistons struggled mightily last season both in starting and backup duty, keeping up his typical mastery as a rebounder, but regressing as both a defender and a scorer. Now, to interject here a little bit, I do want to note that I think a lot of the conversations or criticisms directed at Daryl Morey are really mistakes made last offseason, that giving Drummond a player option, giving Eric Gordon a player option, having Kyle Lowry essentially come back this year, and all those are situations where the player basically had the decision. Lowry in a bit of a different category as he's back on a full-scale minimum, and I've kind of said this before, but I do believe the Lowry outlook is he wanted last year to be his ride-off into the sunset season, and we know what happened last year on the court. So did not want to retire with that sour taste in his mouth, and I can respect wanting to come back just because of that there. Eric Gordon, sort of the similar boat here, that he directly had that player option, so there was no world in which he was not returning to the Philadelphia 76ers. They were able to do a little bit of you scratch my back, I scratch yours, where he opted out of the deal, came back on a veteran's minimum, and both sides win. That for the Sixers, they got a little bit taken off the salary cap because of the way that the minimums count, and for Eric Gordon, and because the salary cap increased overall, that his minimum is worth more than what his player option would have been. So I believe his number went from 3.6 million or from 3.5 million to 3.6 million, and from the Sixers angle that it went from counting 3.5 against the cap to 2.3 is what I believe the number is. But the point being here, that all these guys basically control their own destiny, with Andre Drummond being the clearest example. Now, to continue on a bit in the article, I do want to read on that it writes, quote, with an expiring deal worth just $5 million, Drummond could easily be moved in almost any trade. He has enough pedigree that some teams may be actually willing to surrender an even asset to bring him to town. Drummond's game is a throwback to the hulking big men of the past. He's not going to stretch the floor from deep, nor is he going to become a creation hub as a handoff threat around the perimeter. Drummond knows what he brings to the table, and he does it at a high level. There will always be a team in need of high-level rebounding off the bench. As such, the Sixers would be unlikely to struggle if they chose to search out a trade partner for the veteran center. Now, I think this is a bit optimistic on what the potential market for Andre Drummond can be. I do agree with the point that backup centers are one of those commodities that at the trade deadline, multiple teams are moving theirs and multiple teams are looking to add. That we have felt that firsthand here in Philadelphia and gone through the cycle of the DeAndre Jordans and, all the recycled names from Amir Johnson. You can run down the list of guys that were given a chance and basically had nothing left in the tank. I sort of think Drummond falls into that category here. Now, to be fair to Andre, and first I'll take a peek at what his stat profile was last year, that he played 18.8 minutes per game, averaged 7.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, 1.0 steal per game, 1.4 turnovers. He is 32 years old, which is probably younger than he feels in a lot of our head there, and was bothered by injuries last year. The toe injury in particular kept him out for an extended period of time, and Drummond was pretty open on it. Affected his movement, his cutting. Basically, anytime he took a step, he felt that. And I also will reflect on that specific toe injury. How it happened there is when that game against the San Antonio Spurs, I think this was back in December of last year, where Drummond was ejected and then let back into the game, which is something I've never seen before, but because the referee directly got the issue wrong, that they did sort things out and allow him to stay in the game there. But during the ejection, Drummond was angry and kicked the stanchion walking out of the arena. That is where the toe injury originated from. And the Sixers have never outright said that, but you can connect the dots for when he particularly popped on the injury report, which was the next day after this game. And Drummond himself really never found his full footing there. I do appreciate the anger. I felt the same way at the time. Obviously, did not play out the way that we did hope. Now, the other point that I did want to hit on here is these talks may have already started. And the reason that I say this is this report coming from Tony Jones. And the article continues on to write, according to Tony Jones of The Athletic, the Sixers have explored potential avenues to trade Drummond this summer. Quote, if I were a Philly Sixers fan, I would be looking out for Andre Drummond, Jones posted on July 1st. The Sixers have been trying to move him over the last 24 hours. Let's see if they get it done. Now, Jones has been a guy that's been very on top of this Sixers team this summer, been out there in Summer League and did a really nice job sort of reporting on the VJ Edgecombe situation and a couple other storylines that did emerge out there. I do think there's some weight for what he's saying. And the reason that I do believe that this holds or makes some sense here is based on the finances. And to dive into the Sixers salary cap perspective, we won't get too deep in the weeds here, but you can see that they are over the straight up salary cap. But the two numbers that you truly have to keep an eye on are those first and second aprons. Now, let's remember that these are where the restrictions begin to creep in for what trades you can make, your roster, the way you can make up your roster, and the numbers that you can go up to. The Sixers are currently $7.791 million below the first apron and roughly $18 million below the second apron. Now, this is incomplete as Quentin Grimes is going to be the key part of that there, that he still has to sign his contract, and every expectation is it will be with Philadelphia. The restricted free agent market has entirely dried up, and we've talked about that overall storyline quite a few times on this channel already. It does feel like that's going to continue to stretch out, which is probably part of the reason why there's been no roster movement beyond just waiting on Grimes to this point here. But ultimately, depending on what that dollar figure ultimately settles to be, it could end up being incredibly valuable to just drop $5 million off the books and potentially get you below one of those aprons. We will see what those figures make sense and make out to be. And the other key part of this is obviously, while Andre Drummond has not been the best version of himself, the Sixers still need big man production. I think a large part of this equation completely ties into how ready are Janai Broome and Adem Bona. Now, I personally am far more encouraged by what I've seen from Bona, that I do believe he's taken some strides forward. He's exactly the archetype of player that I like in the basic center skills, that he's just going to block shots, get rebounds, catch lobs, and that's pretty much it. But you can carve out an incredible career for yourself, look towards the Clint Capella type of guys, and make yourself a great deal of money in the process. I do believe Bona is heading down that path, and I think that is worth investing in there. Janai Broome very much cut from a quite different mold there, that he wants to be more of a playmaking hub, that he is a guy that plays in the post a little bit more, sort of a throwback style of game. There is some basketball feel that he does have, but I still kind of question what his NBA fit will be, and I'm not fully investing in that being the solution to this overall impending backup center equation here. But I do think that will be a factor in their decision-making process towards if they truly do move Andre Drummond. I like Andre Drummond. He's been a good guy. I have told this story before, but something that always stood out to me is during his first tenure in Philadelphia. It was a Sixers off night. I was down covering a Blue Coats game, and he pulled up wearing a Paul Reed Blue Coat jersey sitting courtside there. I think that's really cool from a locker room perspective, but at the end of the day, this is a business here. The Sixers are here to improve their basketball team to the highest possible capability. If that involves Andre Drummond, you better believe that Daryl Morey will pull that trigger there. So we will see what ultimately does go down, and I will note to that same point that yes, Drummond was pretty stellar during his first tenure in Philadelphia. I think it does get remembered with rose-colored glasses a bit from the standpoint of he was only here for half a season. He played very well for that half of the season, but from what I've observed from afar, is the Andre Drummond experience tends to wear on you over time a little bit. That yes, he can pull in these monstrous rebounding numbers. Yes, he can have those games where he will drop 20 and 20, and it looks incredible in the process there, but there's a lot of games where that is not the case as well, and I do think that we did not get to that stretch of the Andre Drummond cycle before he was ultimately moved as a part of that James Harden trade. So still a lot to go down with the Sixers team. I do believe once Quentin Grimes does sign on the dotted lines, we could begin to see a couple of the moves around the margins, but that will be the sticking point of this offseason, is whatever Quentin Grimes that number is will impact the decision-making process from here, and Andre Drummond himself might want to be a little bit cognizant of that, but we will see how things ultimately go down. Is Andre Drummond a guy that you want back on the Sixers team? Do you think it is unfair to hold last season against him, which obviously he was not the problem, nor was he the solution? But the Sixers have attacked that, added 2 young big men to surround him with, and could be rolling in that direction. With the youth movement in full store, headlined by the Tyrese Maxeys, the Jared McCains, the VJ Edcombs here, I wouldn't mind just seeing what the young kids can do. Can Adembona be a real center at the NBA level? Is Janai Broom ready to make more of an impact than I am personally giving him credit for? We will see how those questions answer themselves as the season inches closer. But Andre Drummond, maybe time to keep watching your back a little bit there. Let me know what you guys think about all that in the comments. Appreciate each and one of you guys for tuning in this video as always. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button on the channel. I know it is the dead of the offseason, but we continue plugging through right here on Sixers Digest. So drop a like on this video, drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button, and I'll be back talking to you next time. Peace.